Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. This time we'll be taking a look at Journey Begins. This is a bit of a long overdue video. I think this is probably the 5th time I'm trying to record this. Hopefully this goes well this time, but... well, let's get started. As per usual, I'm going to go from worst to best, and therefore the first one is going to be Forest, surprising literally nobody. So Forest comes in with basically nothing to his name except a stat line, which is pretty much every healer ever. They seem to be very afraid to do any kind of pref when it comes down to healers. We have 3 right now. We have Brave Camilla, who has garbage pref. We have Bride Fjorm, which has at least a pretty decent one. And then we have Veronica, who I don't think needs any introduction. But for some reason, we have not gotten anything else. Oh, and Loki, I guess, but Loki's pref is so garbage, you always replace it anyway. So, yeah. Here comes Forest. At the very least, he brings two new skill to the pool, which is Fortress Res and Resploy. I just don't understand why Resploy is locked to 5-star, considering Resploy is available at 4-star on Sonya. I know it's a 5-star exclusive unit, but if you check the code at 4-star, she gets Resploy. Fully unlocked. At 4-star. So, yeah, this is kind of a shame considering Fortress Res is pretty worthless as a skill and has pretty much no reason in existing. It's decent as a seal, but that's about it. If you're going to use any of the Fortress skill, it's typically going to be Fortress Def Res because at the very least you get a decent enough payoff for it to be worth using. But yeah. So, let's move on to comparison. Honestly, the main unit to be compared to Forest is obviously Priscilla when it comes down to overall stats. If you go Speed Plus, Priscilla is faster. And definitely that's pretty solid, because at the end of the day Forest kind of beats her in everything except speed if you go Speed Plus. If you go Attack Plus on Priscilla and you compare this to a Speed Plus Forest, Forest has equal attack, better speed, same def, better res, better HP, so it's basically equal or better at everything. So there's that. That said, if you go Speed Plus, Priscilla will be doubling things that Forest may struggle with. At the end of the day, though, they're kind of just stat sponge, and if you already have a plus 10 Priscilla or Priscilla you've already worked on, don't bother with Forest. It's not enough of an upgrade to be worth it. Not to mention, if you're going to go for the focus, don't bother. Just wait, because he's going to be demoted to 3 to 4-star right after his banner ends, which really makes me realize why the hell is he even available as a 5-star unit. You know what happens because he's a 5-star unit on the banner, like a potential 5-star pity break? It means if you don't get the color you want, you don't get to go colorless. You know, if say you're going green and there's colorless red and blue, so there's no green, you can't just go colorless because you still can get pity broken by Forest. So as a result, you might just get screwed by the system. If he was a 4-star focus without a 5-star exclusive, this would not be a problem. And it would mean that if you get pity broken, you'd get pity broken by a 5-star colorless, which, to be honest, a good chunk of the 5 stars in the colorless pools are at least good or have really good fodder. So, yeah, that would have been at least pretty solid if he was, a 4-star exclusive and not a 5-star or 4-star. Add to this the fact that because there's more 5-star on the banner, it actually ruins the rates of the other 5-star. To put it in perspective, if Forest was a 4-star exclusive, the rate of the 5 stars for red would go from 2.5 to 3.3%. It's a complete upgrade by about 33%. But because he's a 5-star, he drags the rate of every unit on the banner down, which is just bad. It's just a terrible idea. So you don't have a color to go to, should you miss the color you want to go for. And on top of that, he just lowers the rate of the entire banner. Fantastic. And all that for what? A unit that's mildly better than Priscilla, because he has Gen 4 BST, and even then not by much. Not enough to just go like, you should always use her, or him rather, over Priscilla. That's not too great. So, what about Clarine? Well, Clarine kind of just punches a hole in the whole point of Forest. The thing with Forest is that he hits hard. As far as the healer Cav is concerned, he actually has one of the highest attack value that of any of them. I think he might be tied for the highest. Might be wrong on that. At least for healer Cavs, which is kind of impressive in a way. But at the same time, the main place where you use a healer Cav, outside of, you know, in certain specific situation, is mostly an AR with a Panic Staff or a Pain Plus Staff. Obviously, if you're going to go that route, you should go Panic, because Panic is a lot more frustrating to deal with. Panic also continue being a pain on the following turn, whereas Pain Plus, it's just damage you take. If the enemy has something like air, that's all healed up. It's just overall not that helpful. Whereas, you know, if you have a unit like, say, Clarine with Panic, this is really frustrating to deal with. Why is Clarine so much more annoying to deal with? Well, she has more defense. And more speed. Why is this important? Because the goal of a healer Cav in AR is not exactly to do damage. It's to do damage but also survive. Because what you can do with a healer Cav is to just attack, get danced, and then snipe something off. Because you have so much movement. This is the biggest thing going for any healer Cav. And that's why those are typically used, because you can typically use them as the center of a Cav ball or whatever you're using to just panic from every side of the map, which makes it really annoying to approach. So, yeah, this is definitely helpful. Your attack just does not matter. Your attack does not matter. So at the end of the day, what ends up happening is, as long as Clarine can take the hit, she will typically go first and inflict panic on literally everything, even if they have no C disrupt. Unless she does, like, absolutely no damage, which is typically not the case. At the end of the day, what ends up happening is that you have enough speed to block follow-ups, you have enough bulk to be able to take hits, which is not exactly something that Forest over here can do. So, not exactly amazing job for him. What Clarine can do is just run something like attack def push 4 and have 29-29. At max merge, if you go speed plus, of course, you have basically 40 speed on top of 33 def and 33 res. With buff, that's 39 def, 39 res, and 46 speed, which makes it really annoying to approach. And guess what? That stat line has still not been power crept. This is a launch unit, for God's sake. Why is this still the best unit for this? I cannot believe this is real. Also, keep another thing in mind. I'm only comparing Forest right now to other 3 to 4 star Cavs. Cav healers. Why? Because if I'm comparing him to 5-star, first off, I'm basically saying, like, I'm comparing, say, Soleil to Brave Alm. Which should be the opposite. I should compare Brave Alm to Soleil, because Soleil is the easier and better alternative to Brave Alm. And therefore, it makes Brave Alm useless. It's not like I should have, like, argument as to why Soleil is worthless, because Brave Alm exists. one is an easier, way easier to obtain unit. So obviously I'm not going to be like, well, Veronica is a better unit overall than Forest. Of course, everybody knows this. So, of course I'm going to compare him to units that are similar. Another thing is, infantry healers typically do just about everything better outside of what I've mentioned with AR. So, you know, of course I'm going to talk about mostly healer caps and not add infantry healers. Everybody knows infantry healers have access to way more options, which makes them overall a lot easier to work with. This is nothing new, so yeah. So, a lot of people also have mentioned interest in me talking about healer builds. Here you go. Most healers can be built in a way similar to this, basically working on making their strength work, but also covering up their weakness. Push 4 and Brazen actually works really well together. A lot of people actually does not know this. I don't quite understand why that's the case. But yeah, most people actually don't know how well they work together purely because of Martyr. If you don't know how Martyr works, which I would not be exactly surprised because most people don't really use healers, especially with Martyr. The way Martyr works is that it heals all of the HP lost for the healer on top of healing the other side. In other words, if you have, say, 40 HP and your current HP is at, say, 24, you'll heal back to 32. Guess what? That's still in Brazen range and attack speed push 4 range. But you healed up, meaning that it's harder for you to die. Miracle is also a good option, because at that point, say you're at 40 HP, you can go down all the way to 1, still live, do damage, then just use Martyr on somebody and you're back to actually 20 HP. And guess what? You're back in push range and Brazen range, which is why it's really solid. It's really solid if the unit can have enough bulk to be able to survive even on like less than full HP, which actually works well for Forest here. Push is also a good way to enable Brazens to begin with, so it means that Razzle Dazzle works with this combo still. So essentially with this set you end up with 66 attack, 66 attack, 47 speed, 36 def and 45 res, which is overall not bad. Attack Ploy can also be replaced for Drive Attack 4, or whatever it's called, Joint Drive Attack I think, which, you know, that's pretty good if you want to just support your team. Attack Ploy is also an option because he has the rest for it. Goddamn traps. And yeah, so this is still an option. If you want to go more on the damage route of things, you can just go for something like Melancholy instead of Pain Plus, or Panic. It's really up to you. Both of them are actually really frustrating status effect to deal with, except that obviously Panic is easier to get, especially considering E comes with it. Which means you have an extra 2 attack over the set on the left because Pain Plus is 10 might, whereas Melancholy and Panic are 12 might. And just go Raffle Staff on the weapon, because at that point Dazzling Staff is not as helpful. That said, because of this, you don't have Razzle Dazzle anymore. Which means, obviously you want to have a lull to lower the damage you sustain, which makes it easier to get in Brazen range if you have to deal with ranged unit or DC units. Still, with this, you essentially hit 71 attack on top of 47 speed, which is really good offensively, on top of hitting a good chunk of 39 defense and 48 res, which is, again, very solid. So yeah. And you can also use Drive Attack, Join Drive Attack, to push your attack up to 75 if you really want to just kill whatever you're dealing with. Or just use Rest Ploy and have 76 attack, that's also an option. It's really up to you at the end of the day. But yeah, that's about all I have to say with healers in general. Most healers are kind of built the same way because they have no pref whatsoever to work with. I don't understand why Lachesis still doesn't have a pref, because the Earth Sword would make complete sense because it works as a Nosferatu tome, which Nosferatu is basically absorb in this game. So just make a fucking pref absorb. There you go. Wow, it took me 5 seconds to think of this. But yeah. Moving on to Midori. Now, when it comes on to Midori, there's two things that's worth mentioning before talking about Midori, and that's obviously Close Foil and Spendthrift Bow. Now, Close Foil is not what I consider a good skill. A lot of people seem to think it's like the best new skill ever added to the game, for some fucking reason. But just like Distant War, which is a skill that was introduced with New Year, it is not really that amazing. Outside of certain units, to deal with Legendary Crom. But who in the God's name would go out of their way, right? Out of their way to kill her for Close Foil on, say, Echidna to deal with one unit. However, if she was green, that would not be a problem because she'd be an actual counter to Crom. With that stat line, it's really solid and very easy to work with, and absolutely hammers Crom home. So there's that, but the problem is that's not kind of the case. Still, a Close Foil is a very niche skill, because at the end of the day, if you're using this on an archer or something, dragons still very much will be able to hit you and you won't be able to hit them back. Dragons are very common, even to this day, and therefore it's not amazing. If you're dealing with mages, or anything that hits res, you also do not get the 5 attack and defense that the Close Foil provides, which makes it even less relevant because the effect, like the second effect of giving you stat, only work all the time, which is not good. Overall, it's a skill that's very niche. Close Foil especially because this is meant to be on ranged units. You know how many ranged green unit we have in this game that could actually use this? Not many. If we had something like Close Ward, this would be good for Bowie, because his pref gives him DC on everything but dragon. Close Ward would basically allow him to also hit dragons, while also getting 5 res and 5 attack against them, which is really good, because his def is already solid as is. So, you know, that would actually work really well for him. But here it only really works on one unit, and one unit only that I can think of actually, which is Julia. Julia basically is able to hit dragon, specifically dragons, with base Naga refined. Which is the only thing Close Foil doesn't let you hit. In other words, with Close Foil in mind, you're basically able to cover up her def weakness. Her res is already solid as is, you get an extra 4 def and res because of Naga itself, and then as a result you are also getting an extra 5 attack and res, 5 attack and defense against the unit that would actually be a problem. So you can actually make the base Naga actually work as a decent tome, despite the fact that Divine Naga is typically better. So yeah, that's the one combo I can think of, because otherwise it's not a very good skill. Now, the weapon that that I barely hear people talk about that's actually really good is Spendthrift Bow. The way Spendthrift Bow works is that, effectively, as long as, you know, you're fighting, which basically is not a requirement, you get an extra 7 attack and you reduce the enemy's attack by 7, effectively giving you 7 attack, def, and res, which is really good. The drawback with this is the fact that you get an extra 2 charge count after every fight. Now, for the dumb question a lot of people are asking for some reason, if you have Special Spiral and you use this, what happens? First off, if you don't proc anything, Special Spiral is worthless. If you do proc something, then you better hope to have gotten charges after proccing the skill, because otherwise it would have done nothing and you would still be stuck at 4 charges. It's overall worthless, basically, is what I'm saying. So, yeah. In general, when it comes down to this bow, the main thing you should keep in mind is that 2 cooldown specials are a king. The idea behind it is that you just get hit, and proc. And then when you get the +2 charge count, does not matter, because you'll already be at the max charge anyway, which actually works fairly well. You can also consider Brave Lucina with 4 cooldown, but the problem with this is if you just end up one-shotting, worthless. If you end up just, you know, attacking, getting hit, attacking again, all your charge are gone. Almost all your charge. It's just overall not exactly consistent, so sticking to a 2 cooldown special is easily the way to go. What is important to keep in mind with Spendthrift Bow is also the fact that you need a speed stat, which is something Midori does not have at low merges. That's kind of a problem, because the main thing that makes Spendthrift Bow so good is being able to double with it, but she has 30 speed, which at low merges does not work at all in your favor. So, as a result, it's not exactly too good on her. That said, a lot of units, like say, for example, let's just pick Clarice. Not exactly an amazing unit, is it? 25 defense, 20 res. 31 attack. That's not too great. This bow essentially puts her attack up to 38. Now we're looking at something decent. What about the bulk? 32, 27. Then you have attack res bombed, pushing that to 32, 32. Had merges, that's 36, 36, and buff pushes that to 42, 42. Do you see where I'm coming from with this? This is without a low skill in mind you. This is just attack res bond, merges, buffs, and this weapon. No refine, no flowers, no nothing. And suddenly Clarice is a good unit. Not amazing, mind you, but a usable one. And this is inheritable. Keep that in mind. So, yeah, that's a really good bow. Basically, as long as you have a speed stat that's at least workable, you can use this bow. That's basically all it means. So, yeah, really good weapon. Not really amazing in AR, because in AR you kind of want to get your special charged up in some cases. Though I can see it works somewhat with Vantage builds. It's not exactly what I call a priority overall. Still, very good weapon, and I can see a lot of people use it pretty well. So, yeah. When it comes down to comparison, however, yeah. As you can see, I'm not doing this with the typical, you know, showing the units with their stat at +0. The main reason is because Jamkey can get 10 flowers, whereas the other two can get 5. And Jamkey also gets stats because he's neutral on the first merges. Just want to point that out for people who don't actually realize why I do this, and kind of just alternate sometimes. Though I kind of want to know, do you guys prefer if I just do comparison like this from now on for all of them, even if that's not even if there's no flower difference or something like that, or do you want me to keep the other thing? Really up to you. I honestly don't care either way, but just thought I'd do this. So, if you compare Jamkey to Midori, this is going to be a quick one, really. You can see that Midori has basically better stat everywhere except speed. And you kind of have to go speed plus, otherwise the weapon is not good enough by itself. And even then, you'll still need to push a bit more speed on top of it if you want it to work consistently. 46 speed being a bit shaky at times. Unless you have outside help, of course. So, yeah. The difference, however, is that for 3 attack, you don't have to deal with combat triangle. The only thing that's a problem are going to be Raven Tomes, which are not exactly a problem if you're going to use Jamkey. A lot of the builds that I'm going to be showcasing on this for Midori are basically set that either Igren uses or my Jamkey uses. No offense, but that's kind of just what it is. Midori is not exactly a unique unit by any stretch of the imagination. So, yeah, at the end of the day, you have more or less the same stat as Jamkey, but Jamkey is Very cheap to plus 10. Right now, if you have gotten every copies of Gemki, considering he's getting a rerun soon, if you have gotten every copy, including this copy of Gemki, you're basically looking at 1000 Grell to plus 10 Gemki. It is extremely cheap, and Gemki is still one of the best free-to-play clear of this game. My plus 10 Gemki has soloed every single legendary hero battle and mythic hero battle of this game in every other bit of content of the game, effectively, outside of maybe AR, because you can't really just use one fucking team to clear everything in AR. And Arena sold because I can't always bring in, so, you know. Gemki is no slouch. Very good unit. And unlike Midori, doesn't cost about 2,000 orbs on average to plus 10. Or actually more like 1,500. Which is still too much, considering that she's barely better than Gemki, and will do absolutely worse in every cases that you're dealing with a blue unit. And the green unit, Gemki will do typically about just as well, so it's kind of pointless. So yeah, Gemki can also be used in AR as a vantage unit with Candlewog's bow, from what I've been told. I don't use him that way, so I'm not comfortable talking about how good it is, but just know that it is a thing that people do. So yeah. As far as Egren goes, this comparison is really bleak. Keep in mind both of them are 5-star exclusives. And Guardian Bow is a busted weapon. It is so busted, it's ridiculous. So, first off, it has cooldown -1, which Midori gets cooldown charge +2 instead at every fight. Meaning Egren can actually use special a lot more effectively than Spendthrift Bow will ever be working with Midori, period. If you use a Slaying Bow, then Egren typically will have just more stat overall, because Guardian Bow does -5 to all stats, outside of Res, but who cares about Res? She doesn't hit that stat. Which, you know, effectively means that she has 20 more points of stats, and, you know, if you had +5 across the board, you end up with 7 more speed, 7 more attacks, 7 more speed, 2 less defense, and like 8 more res. You can kind of see where I'm going with. You're damned if you go Slaying, you're damned if you go Spendthrift. Spendthrift basically gives you an extra 7 attack, def, and res. Guardian Bow essentially gives you 5 attack, speed, def, res. The thing, though, with this, is that Guardian Bow basically does both a Slaying and Spendthrift Bow at the same time, and because Guardian Bow has 14 might, the fact that you get 2 more attack than what Guardian Bow gives doesn't matter. You end up with the same amount of attack at the end of the day, because 14 might plus 5, 19, 12 plus 7, 19. You have the same might overall. You also get 5 speed she doesn't get, and that would actually save her life because her speed is actually shaky. So yeah, you're kind of in a weird position, aren't you? You're already behind in res, even with the bow, even with Spendthrift Bow, you're behind in res by 1, you're behind in speed by 7, you have the same attack, you have 1 more HP, and you have overall, you know, 10 more def. The def is really the only thing going for you, but the def also doesn't really save you in any way, shape, or form in most cases. Because the thing is, even though you're bulkier on a surface level, the way you typically use Egren is one of 2 ways. You typically use her as an AoE buster, or, more importantly, as an Aether chugger. With Aether, what ends up happening is you have Special Spiral. You have 4 cooldown because of Guardian Bow. Special Spiral basically makes it 2. Brave Lucina basically means you get hit, you proc Aether. So, even though you have 10 less defense than Midori does, typically what ends up happening is you just heal back the damage you were inflicted anyway. And at plus 10, let me tell you, Egren is a lot bulkier than she looks. Mine is plus 9, so not exactly plus 10. Plus 9 with 5 Dragon Flowers. And I typically can just leave her right next to Surtur, in turn get hit back, and I'm just back to full anyway. While he is like at 10 HP left, if he's not dead. That's kind of what you're working with when it comes down to Ygritte. She is disgusting when it comes down to this weapon. Because effectively, let's just say I'm adding buffs, right? Let's just say I'm adding buffs and I'm adding the weapon. You're basically looking right now at 42 defense and 40 res. And unlike Midori that has a bit of a shaky amount of res, Ygritte doesn't have that problem. Ygritte's stat line is just kind of like perfect. The only thing I kind of wish was happening was the fact that she would have a bit less depth than, or rather 30-30 instead of 31-29. But even then, like, she's really solid. The requirement when it comes down to Ygritte is still pretty simple. It's to have more speed in either start of combat or during combat. This is important because it basically means a speed check is very easy to make. If you're dealing with someone with, say, 47 speed attacking you, and you're buffed to 48, you get the effect even if in combat they basically beat you by 5 speed. Likewise, if you end up with like 48 speed and they have 50 speed, but in combat you end up with 53, you still get the effect and get to double them, so... You see what I mean. Which means something like attack speed bond works wonders with her. Speed def bond, speed res bond, also really good option if you just want to have more bulk. So, yeah, overall, very, very, very solid unit. Whereas Midori, on the other hand, can kind of do the same thing, just a lot shakier. And when it comes on to Brave Bow, she can do it slightly better than Jamke, but the second a blue unit shows up, Jamke kind of is just more consistent. Which makes her overall not too great. Now let's solve builds. These are the sets I typically run on my Jamke. So I know they actually work, outside of Swift Sparrow 2 being attack speed 2 instead. The difference is that Midori's speed is very shaky. Very, very, very shaky. So she has to use Swift Sparrow. So she gets less damage on her AoEs, but it still works out pretty well. Now she ends up with 73 attack and 46 speed, which is shaky, but thankfully because she has so much attack, typically she kills the enemy. That said, Jamke can hit 67 attack. If you're using Swift Sparrow, 69 attack. The difference is not big. It really, really isn't. And Jamke doesn't have color to deal with, and Jamke typically hits 51 speed. With attack speed 2. At least with summoner support. Otherwise you're at 49, which is still better. At least that the way I use mine, he hits that. So, yeah. It's, yeah. On the set on the left, I use Special Spiral on mine, but again, Midori's speed is fairly shaky, so low attack speed is kind of a better option. So, you know, these are sets that definitely can work, but if you're going to go for something like that, I'd strongly, strongly, strongly suggest just build a Jamke with this. He's going to be so much more helpful. As for the second set, well, this is basically what you would do with Ygritte. Except, again, you would not use low attack speed 3 on Midori. On the set on the right, you just use Special Spiral instead, or with Aether. But since Spendthrift basically locks you out of using Aether, you lose bulk overall because you don't get to heal yourself consistently, unless you use Noontime, which is still an option, but not very amazing, because if you fail to get the kill, yeah, that's kind of a problem. Still works semi-decently, it's just not amazing. And on the left, it's an AoE set. This can actually do work a bit better than Ygritte, because her base attack is much higher. Because, you know, attack plus and all. That said, at the end of the day, if you're comparing Ygritte to Midori, Ygritte typically hits very similar numbers. I believe she hits something like 62 attack, which means that with attack speed 2 and life and death 4, she actually hits the same attack stat, I think, or somewhere similar. So yeah, either the same or very similar, but the stat that she decreased in combat only happens in combat, so they kind of end up being slightly similar. So yeah, that's Midori. Now let's move on to Lilith and talk about a few issues I have with her. So Lilith, our not really favorite, but let's see, this fish dragon looking thing. I don't understand how a unit that gets slaughtered in one hit by literally anything in the Fate story, in fact, literally gets one-shot by a goddamn, like, faceless? Of all things, a faceless? In one hit? For no reason, she just dies from that? How the hell is she a trainee unit? A trainee unit, to me, is someone that has a lot of time to improve and become a lot better, or is a combat genius. Neither of which she is. She basically cares of animals. How is that supposed to make her a combat genius? Is beyond me. Like, Idun getting 6 BST makes sense. She's literally the final boss. Surtur, sure, still final boss-ish kind of thing. Fatiki, yeah, well, they kind of had to fight in a war. Lilith never fought in the war, but you know, there's that. Donald, well, he had like skill to give him potential, so yeah, those units kind of make sense. And then you come to Lilith, who just basically gets one shot and dies in the story, and for some reason gets a trainee status. I do not understand this, and to me it just feels, yet again, like the fact that the director that worked on Fates also is the director of Heroes, and is like, ooh, Lilith is my waifu, and therefore I'm going to make him, or her rather, better. Just like I did with Corin, who was not even a trainee unit at the start of the game and now is for no fucking reason. Why is this a thing? I hate this. I hate this so much. So, anyway, with that out of the way, and the other issue that she has is that she completely invalidates another unit, but we'll talk about that once we go to comparison. She comes with Drain Drive Attack, which I do not feel too happy seeing the way it was implemented, because it basically works as a self-buff, which typically is something that only happens in A slots. B slot do debuffs the enemy. A slot are typically stats. And then you have basically C slot that buffs and buffs yourself, which I don't like that. I don't like that. I feel like that's a bit much. Especially since there's no limit to it. Meaning you can just have like 6 unit in AR with drive attack 4, and they all have 24 extra attack for no fucking reason. Yeah, that's great. That's so great. Well, not 24 for all of them, but typically 20 for most, and then 24 for one. It's not what I consider exactly balanced in any way, shape, or form, and should just be like limited to like does not work if you get a certain amount of buffs total or something like this, because right now it's too easy to stack stuff and makes it really annoying to face. Basically like word skills, but on crack. So yeah. Because you could just have 3 drive def and 3 drive res, and you basically have just basically wards everywhere. No reason, just it's there. 12 death to 12 death and 12 rest to everybody would like just that. Which, you know, was not annoying at all with flyers. No, 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 no! Totally not going to be extremely obnoxious with infantry units being able to use this. No, no! Anyway, the way her weapon works is essentially she just needs to be within 3 space of the support unit to get 5 across the board. The idea is to use this with male Corin so you get 9 across the board, because both effect kind of combos into one another. The other thing is that she has an extra 3 movement. Or rather, she can teleport to him if within 3 space. Cool, cool, cool. I just want to point out a combo most people actually kind of don't realize that you can do for no fucking reason. Layla. You know what you can do with Layla? Support her to Lilith. Go just straight up in, kill a unit, then Lilith take your place, and then you can make Lilith teleport back to Layla, which basically means that you can get out of danger out of nowhere. And you can just basically repo on top of it to push Layla even further back so you're safe. This is a bit of a specific combo, but it's actually kind of disgusting how much range you can do on this. You can basically snipe a unit and get out of there scot-free, which is really broken. On top of getting 5 across the board. That's, yeesh. Yeesh, yeesh, yeesh. So, the unit that she completely invalidates is Naga. So, Naga is basically a unit I actually praised when she was released for one thing, which is basically like, if you use your brain, you end up getting a lot out of the unit, upward to 9 to all stat, which is really good. The problem is Dragon Fang, or Divine Fang, sorry. Divine Fang has a problem. Naga was made to work in AR. Divine Fang only works on allies adjacent to her. Do you see the problem here? AR totally doesn't have an Aversa problem, and now actually Iago on top of it, I'm sure. No, no, no. I'm sure that's not a problem, right? Yeah, it's gonna be extremely obnoxious to set up for Naga, because the mode is designed about just having social distancing between units. Otherwise you get AIDS. So yeah, this is not too great, because that's what she relies on for her weapon to give her extra stats. Unless all of your units have Dragon Effectiveness to begin with, which is not exactly good, because it means that it limits your options. I've already left my piece in feedback, but what I said to them is they really should update Divine Fang. Essentially update it so it would work on all allies within 2 space. And if, you know, if they want to balance it so it's not obnoxious to deal with in defense, only make it work with on allies within 2 space in the player's hand, and therefore a weapon would actually work way easier and would be a lot easier to just use in general. I also said that if they really wanted to make Naga work a lot better, they could also make the range of the weapon itself 3, but that's not exactly required. Essentially, if that was the case right now, I could say Naga would be a better fighter, whereas Lilith would be a better supporter. Because yes, Naga would end up having more stats, though keep in mind, Lilith is a trainee unit, she has 10 more BST than Naga. And she does not struggle in the attack department like Naga does. So, in other words, and, you know, Naga sometimes struggles with speed, especially on lower merges. Therefore, you know, the fact that Lilith doesn't have to struggle with that is kind of a huge boon for her. Which means that, you know, the 5 across the board is really solid for her, and you can actually invest in Death Res Bond for her, because you can just teleport to the unit, right? And because you teleport to the unit, you're adjacent to them. Bonds work with this, so you can end up having basically 10 Def and Res while your attacking speed is completely better than Naga. Because Naga can't really do this as well, which is kind of a shame, because I do have a plus 10 Naga. I actually do use Naga quite a lot, and I can tell you one thing, Naga is good in just about every mode. Not amazing, but like really solid in about every mode, especially Rocker Siege. But while I do say this, she's terrible in AR. She's basically just a stat stick staying around for you to get more points for the most part, and Altina is just way better at doing just about everything. That's kind of a problem, because that's what she's made for. And Lilith, well, to put it simply, if you have 2 allies within 2 space with Dragon effectiveness, Lilith is just completely better than Naga in most cases. So, that's not exactly a good thing, is it? So, yeah. Overall, I'd say if you're... And on top of this, the other worst part about this is that Naga is on a Mythic banner. Or Legendary, whatever. At the end of the day, it's way harder to pull Naga than it is to pull Lilith. Once Lilith is on a 3-man banner, plus setting her is a question of like... less than half of what you have to spend on Naga. It's insane how much cheaper a unit is to plus 10 on a 3-man banner than it is on a Mythic or 4-man banner. So the fact that she's mostly better is kind of a shame, because, you know, at the end of the day, if Naga worked the way I basically gave for feedback, which they ended up taking, and we're like, we basically gave it to the right department. If you need any... like, they basically were very cordial with me and just spread the information to the people that can actually do something with it. So I don't know if it's gonna do anything. We'll see. But yeah. Naga would end up actually having, you know, the potential of being better than Lilith, or at least comparable to Lilith. Because Lilith is really good. Which is kind of a shame. Now, let's talk about builds. So, when it comes down to builds, there's not many options you can really do with her. The set on the right is basically what I use on my Naga, and it works really well. If you go Def Plus, you end up basically having, you know, 67 attack, 59 speed, which is totally not overkill, guys. 45 Def, 45 Res. And you're immune to bows, as long... which is kind of ridiculous. And on the left side, with Def Res Bond, you are not immune to bows, however, you end up with 50 defense and res. On top of 67 attack and 59 speed. Keep in mind that's without the ally support in mind, because that can push your stat up by 2 across the board. And you can have even more stat overall with, you know, just it being Corin or anything of the sort, which is kind of ridiculous. Overall, a pretty solid unit, despite the fact that there's no reason for her to be this good, considering she's, you know, a very awful fighter that just dies for no reason all the time. But, you know, that's just my 2 cents on that. There's not much else to say here. She's very straightforward, because the main thing when it comes down to flyers is, can they use Pegasus Flight? She can't because she's a dragon. Pegasus Flight is only available on Lance, Axe, Sword, Flyer units. That's it. Okay, so what else? Aerobatics, Flyer Formation. She already has a weapon that basically does that. Only with 1 ally, but with so much range that it doesn't really matter. So what do you have? Well, you have Mystic Boost, you have Guard, and that's kind of it for your B slot. The A slot should really just be Distinct Counter. There's no reason for it to not be Distinct Counter, considering her stat line is just good all around. And the seal is basically Def Res Bond, or another bond skill that you might prefer. Like if you go Attack Plus, you could go Attack Death Bond, for example. Or IoD Shield. That's kind of it. There's not a whole lot of build that can be unique with her, but she's effective, which is the main thing. And now, the last one, which is Rinka. Rinka is Oh my god, I don't understand what came to them, but apparently she's quick. Despite the fact that she's kind of slow in the game she's from. Okay. And boy, oh boy, this tinfoil here actually helps. Why does it help? Because there's a certain unit called Legendary Chrome that's really annoying to deal with. Legendary Chrome basically gets destroyed by Rinka. He has no chance of killing her, even if he tried. Because what ends up happening is just, he hits her, she procs, Bonfire for like 40 damage, kills him instantly. Every time. It's ridiculous. Because of this tinfoil and Rinka's club, she basically ends up with an extra 10 attack and defense. Which means that, first off, tough luck for Crumb to do more than 10 damage. And Bonfire at that point is an extra, 25 damage. If she's in Wrath range, 35. Yeah. Her weapon is effectively breath, but better. If you remember a certain character called Owain, or as I like to call him, Cringe Master 69, he basically has a weapon that's cooldown -1, and also when he gets hit, he gets 2 charges. This is similar to this, meaning it works on both phases if the HP Rinka has is below full. This is the part that makes it broken. The condition is very easy to work with, meaning you can play your phase with this very easily to a ridiculous amount. And her speed is good, which is what makes this weapon work as well as it does. You also get an extra 5 attack and defense if you're like this, so basically, think of it as the weapon has basically brazen attack defense in it, on top of, you get 2 charge when you get hit, on top of cooldown -1. What in the hell is this? So, yeah, this is pretty solid. This tinfoil, again, is not very amazing, but if you're going to get a one-off to deal with Legendary Crom, blessing her to water in the process, a very, 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 very good choice, because at that point, even having one copy of her is perfect to deal with Crom. Crom is just really frustrating to deal with in AA. Though, keep in mind, from what I understand, if you score 740 or less, it's less important. But in my case, I score something like 748 to 760. Dealing with Legendary Crom on Water Season is not rare. I had a week where I had to deal with 6 of them in one fucking go. And believe you me, being able to consistently counter him is difficult. Because there's so many sets you can do with Crom, you can't really have a perfect counter for him, at least until Rinka. Because a lot of unit would be like, oh, I can just deal with this. No, too slow, so I get double and I get killed, because now he just procs Ruptured Sky. And he has like 70 attacks, so I still get hit for like 20 times 2 plus Ruptured Sky. Okay, that's great. I use low end. Oh, well, this one is 40 as like 35 res, but he also gets rid of my attack buff and -9 attack. And he gets rid of all penalty he has. So I can't really do shit with low end either. My low end fails to kill a Crom, for God's sake, with combat advantage, because he fails to double. What is going on? Like, this is Crom in general. He basically forces you to play by his rules. Because he basically gets rid of his penalties, he gets rid of your attack and death buffs, and it's really frustrating to find a way to deal with this consistently as a result. On top of, the -9 attack, which is just the fucking cherry on top of the shit sundae. So, Rinka is already a good one-off as a result. If you're scoring really well in AA, or you're, wanting to start to score really well in AA, I strongly recommend taking the free pull for Rinka, because Rinka is going to be a lifesaver on some weeks. I absolutely assure you. I was not planning on summoning on this banner, but Rinka made me summon on this banner purely for that. So, gives you an idea how helpful she is. I don't really pull for anything new anymore, unless it's a character I really like. But Rinka is just too helpful when you're like talking about high level AA or arena. Mostly AA though. So let's talk about build, shall we? But first, comparisons. So yeah, there's full comparison here, and I could have actually also had Barst here. But let me just say this. Barst does not compare, because the main set that Barst has, which is Time's Pulse with double Wrath because of his weapon with Bonfire to just one-shot, Rinka does better. Straight up. Now if you compare with stats, Linus here, for example, I'm going to consider Rinka under full health because that's very easy to do, getting under full health. Also because you can just enemy phase and still have the bonuses. You are behind by 2 attack, you have basically the same speed, you are ahead by 13 def, actually 18 because of the weapon, and you're still ahead in res. Yeah. Linus though is free, and his stat line is still very solid. So there is that, but Rinka's weapon is kind of just so broken, it doesn't even matter at that point. Even if you take only one copy of Rinka, she's gonna do more or less similar to what Linus might do at plus 10. So that's kind of scary alone to think about. But now let's compare to Edelgard, who's a 5-star exclusive. Edelgard has 1 more attack and is behind in speed by 9 points. Behind still in defense by 9 points. Behind in, actually not behind in res, she has 3 more res than Rinka. And 1 more health. I can't really save that one either. The main thing you can do with Victorious Axe is use sweep sets, which actually is a good thing for her. Because otherwise, you know, kind of really if you compare to Rinka, we can just already double to begin with roughly the same attack, with on top of that instant bonfires. Like, it's ridiculous. Edelgard is still a fairly decent unit though, and you know, the auto follow-up is still solid purely for sweep sets. So there's that. As far as the set on Ross is concerned, Ross ends up with less attack, less speed, less def, but more res. Ross is sorry. Ross is kind of a all-rounded version of Rinka, to some extent. Because you actually have a good res stat here, and if you want to, you know, you can just ignore the speed the speed refine, and just go for something else. Rinka also does not really want to switch weapon, whereas Ross can actually switch weapon at will. He's kind of the best stat line to do this with. So there's that. Like, Faithful Axe on Ross is really, really good. Talking from experience, I'm using that myself on my Ross. And it's actually... How can I put this? Rinka is a very solid unit, but she is kind of a one-trick pony in some ways. It's just that the one trick she has is very strong, whereas Ross has versatility. So, you know, when it comes down to Ross, it depends on what you want to do with him. But Ross will typically not do nearly as well as Rinka will do in a variety of matchups. So yeah, let's talk about builds now. I think this should not come as a surprise. I kind of forgot to remove Time's Pulse on the set on the left. In reality, you kind of want to have Attack Smoke instead. But essentially, the set on the left effectively pushes your stat to 68 attack, 49 speed, which is already very solid offensively, on top of 59 defense, which at that point you're a brick wall when it comes down to physical damage, and the enemy cannot buff their attack, of course. And when it comes down to res, you are up to 41 res. Yes, the res stat is actually salvageable with Rinka, however, only on like higher merges. So yeah, 41 res is really solid, and you know, I actually forgot to add the brazen attack stat, so in reality you actually have 75 attack, 49 speed. My bad, which is kind of ridiculous. This tank counter is more consistent overall than close foil, so, you know, obviously I'm going to go for this tank counter, because if you use close foil, you're dead-ass worthless when it comes out to mages. So there's that. One of the things that makes her really good, though, is that she doesn't rely on Brave Lucina or Infantry Breath to work. She just works by herself, which is really insanely good. And yeah, it actually gives her a lot of options. And Special Spiral is not exactly required either. However, you can use Aether, but that's on a different set. Set on the right basically uses Wrath and Time's Pulse, which, like I said, this is similar to what Bars does with Instant Bonfire at the start of a turn. The difference here is that you're not kind of a sitting duck after you used it. On enemy phase, you just get hit and proc it again. It works. It just works. But also, unlike Bars, who basically would just proc, get hit, and then just do a wimpy second hit, Rinka procs, get hit, gets 2 charged because of her weapon, which means Bonfire is ready again, and procs again. So, considering Bonfire with Wrath is basically, with this set, on the right, you're basically looking at 28 damage on Bonfire, and because of Wrath 38, you get 38 damage proc twice. Very similar to what you do with Ira, with Ragnarastra and Wrath, or Larce for that matter. Except with more damage, and unlike Larce, Ira, and Shannon, you are not locked to being red, which is the biggest thing. Green units are a lot less versatile in the sense that there's a lot less green units that are amazing or have a pref that really defines them. So Rinka has a lot more value than, say, Ira, Larce, or Shannon as a result, because obviously, if you want a good red, there's so many options you can build. If you want a great green, you don't have a whole lot. An instant proc special like this, you're basically relying on either Ruptured Sky or Moonbow, which are not exactly amazing skill when it comes down to damage. Blue has Nyla, so, you know, if a new blue unit did this, it would not be as amazing, because Nyla already does that, because her weapon is basically Nameless Blade with attack speed form, which is fucking ridiculous. But green doesn't have a unit like this, which actually makes Rinka so good. So yeah. Oh yeah, speaking of, red also has Carol and Fur. So, you know, it's not exactly it's not exactly too difficult to get a good red that can do something similar, but for green it's a lot harder. As for the last set, it's basically a set that completely throws away the player phase, or expect you to not heal back to full. Essentially what this does is quite simple. It's just to chug Aether constantly. Essentially you get hit with Brave Lucina, and you actually don't even need Brave Lucina, because the weapon gives you the 2 charges, which means you just get hit proc, get hit proc, get hit proc, get hit proc. Which means you can actually use this with, instead of Corrin, instead of instead of Brave Lucina, you can use something like Corrin's Yato, or the Yatogami as it's actually supposed to be called, but they actually changed it to Yato in English because LOLXD, I guess. Thank you, translation team, you're absolutely terrible. Anyway, gripes aside, this set essentially lets you hit 56 def on top of 35 res, and similarly to Ygren, you end up being a lot bulkier than it seems because you just keep proccing Aether and just keep healing back up. This set is not something I would use in A4 raids still, because A4 raids still uses, you know, AoEs, and AoEs will always be a problem for Rinka. However, in just about every other piece of content, she's going to be quite solid. As a matter of fact, I've been kind of debating on plus-10ing one myself later down the line if, you know, I finish Leaf, Legendary Leaf, Legendary Lucina, and Egren, which are my current merge project. Maybe, we'll see. But yeah, that's about all I have to say about this banner. Hopefully this was at least interesting and you learned something new. But yeah, this is about my 2 cents about this banner. A very long video, and I just hope you guys didn't get too bored from it. Next video should be the refined tierness update. And after that should be the Iago review. As I said, I will typically review GHB units if they are good enough for me to do so. The reason why I say this is because if we get something like Eve, I'm not going to do anything with that. Eve is not amazing, so of course I'm not going to go out of my way to review him. I'm just going to wait like after a month period. But Iago is good enough for me to do this, so there you go. But yeah, hopefully, again, this was helpful, and I'll be seeing you all later. Or on Discord. Have a nice one, everyone. See ya.